So in this review, I wanted to talk about the MacBook Pro 16-inch from 2019 in 2022, a couple of years later, and I wanted to talk about the fact if this is a good computer or not still to this day. Now, I made reviews of this computer pretty much every year since I got it, and I've been using it still to this day, and I wanted to give you my thoughts if I think that this is a good computer to purchase, because as this is an older model, it is heavily reduced in pricing, right? Like you can get this a lot cheaper than when it was released at first, So I wanted to talk about, is this still worth a good purchase? So as you see here, I do have a Mac Mini M1 chip, and the M1 is the new computer chip of the century, so to speak. Like it's the one. If you're going to get a MacBook today, you should probably get something with the M1 or M2. That's like the latest and greatest. You get better battery life, something like 20 hours if you have a MacBook with the M1 chip or M2. But this is one of the last MacBooks to have an old Intel CPU. Now, having said so, and I'm just doing this comparison, just comparing to the M1 chip on the Mac Mini. When I'm doing video editing on this machine and on my Mac Mini, I would say that the export times are pretty much identical. Like it's quite amazing actually how powerful the Mac Mini is because it's a lot cheaper. But the good thing about the MacBook Pro 16-inch is because it's portable. I mean, as far as laptops go, this is a very big laptop. It has a huge screen, right? So if I open this up, you can see just how big the screen is. Like this is a lot of screen real estate, and the image is like, looking at it, it's like super sharp. It's that whole retina display thing. Fantastic. A couple of things that I wanted to mention, what I still like about it and why I still use the MacBook Pro 16-inch from 2019. The touchpad is fantastic. Love this thing so much. The keys are really good. I like using them. I think that pretty much this is the best keyboard ever. Like I do have a, Apple Magic Keyboard, and it's the same type of buttons. They had like butterfly switches before, like it was just terrible. And this one has a really good keyboard. I don't like a couple of things about the MacBook Pro 16-inch, and the first thing I want to mention is the touch bar. I got the idea, it was kind of cool when I decided to make the touch bar so you can customize your own buttons and stuff like that, but I just prefer real buttons. But I've gotten used to it, to be completely honest, and I don't accidentally hit the touch bar, which was my number one complaint about the MacBook Pro 16-inch. You get used to it, and I programmed it in a way so I don't accidentally hit those touch buttons anymore. So I like that a lot, actually. It has a finger touch scanner, so you can log in with your finger, which is very nice. When it comes to ports, it has 4 USB-Cs, Thunderbolt, very nice. It doesn't have an SD card reader, which is a shame because you have to use a dongle and adapter. It's kind of a shame, so I don't like that aspect of it. That would be pretty much the only thing why I would consider getting a newer MacBook Pro 16-inch to get, a built-in SD card reader. But it's really not so bad. If you're working a lot, it can sometimes be annoying that you have to get an adapter, but you get used to it, So heavy-wise, it's about 2 kilograms, I think. It's not too heavy. I gotten used to it. I love the shape. This is the space gray version. It's so thin. It's so stylish. Battery life is still good. I get something like 10 hours from it when I'm editing and doing heavy stuff. Sometimes that dips below that, but most of the time I keep it plugged in. And this is the computer that I use most of the time, and I think it's an excellent computer on so many different levels. I can't really stress how much I love using this thing. It's so good, in fact, that I don't really see any reason to upgrade my computer. And the prices that I've seen, on Amazon and stuff like that, like I think it's a very good price that you get for this thing. Now, some people would argue that you shouldn't even look at this. You should only get something with the MacBook with the M1 chip or the M2. And I understand the argument because it's more future-proof that way. But, nothing is future-proofed forever. If you get a computer now, you're going to use it at most like 3 or 4, maybe 5 years at most. And if you were to get a MacBook Pro 16-inch from 2019 now, you can do a lot of stuff on this thing for the next 5 years. no problems whatsoever. Before this computer, I used to have a MacBook Pro 13-inch that I had for something like 8 years, and it, kept me going, very productive. So I use this MacBook mostly for browsing the web and editing videos for YouTube, and I still do it to this day, and I still love doing it. And I would say that sometimes it does get a bit hot, on the back, and sometimes I do use a case under it, or I use a little pillow or something, so if I keep it on my lap or something like that, I don't want to get burnt. But yeah, it works fantastically well as far as computers go. You can do a lot of things on it. Like, the thing about computers, I like to see computers as tools, what you use them for, how productive you can be. And the MacBook Pro keeps me very productive. Would I recommend people to get this instead of something like, let's say, a MacBook Pro Air or MacBook Air or MacBook Pro 13-inch with the M1 chip? Well, I would probably recommend that before I would recommend this. But if you want that big screen and you don't want to, pay up like $3,000 for a new MacBook Pro 16-inch, if you have a good deal going, this is a very good machine. I think it's kind of underestimated in a sense, because people, they're so focused on, getting the latest and greatest, the performance-wise. And this thing, it just delivers. This is a workhorse, and it's still a good workhorse. And as I said, I do have the Mac Mini with the M1, and I do use it for some work, for some batch editing, conversions and stuff. But most of the time, I still go back to the MacBook Pro 16-inch. I think that the biggest strength of the MacBook Pro 16-inch, aside from its big screen, is actually the performance. Like, there is a lot of power in this workhorse. This is a very powerful machine, still to this day. And the SSD, the built-in NVMe SSD is super fast, and your workflow is pretty much unhindered. I don't have any issues. It's got 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage, and I can do so much with it. I wish that the storage was a bit bigger though. I will be honest about that, but I often use these Samsung T7 hard drives where I just plug it into my computer and it just works very well. Most of the time I just edit directly on portable SSD. So that works phenomenally well. Now, there's one more thing I wanted to mention before I end this little review. It does also have a 3.5 port for headphones and stuff like that, which is good if you want to plug in, headphones. I personally use AirPods and wireless stuff, but if you want it, it's right there. Also, one thing I forgot to mention, one thing that I don't like about the MacBook Pro is probably the webcam, but if you're not doing a lot of that, or if you're just going to do it for simple video conferencing, it's going to work just fine. And oh, I forgot, there's so many things that when you make a review and you don't prepare for it, just speak from the heart, you forget so many things. Another thing that I really like about it are the speakers. The speakers are like, it's got a huge grill on the side of the keyboard, and it just works fantastically well. So anyway, I really recommend this computer for anyone considering purchasing it. I think it is still a good purchase in 2022, and I don't care what people say. People are just performance hogs and they always want the latest and greatest. But the truth is, this machine is very capable. That's the simple truth. Okay, that's all I had for this little review. Hope you enjoyed it, and good luck with your purchasing decision.